Authors, have you ever tried to talk to somebody about your books and stumbled over your words and not known how to get the plot and the story of your book to that person in an effective way? If so, hopefully the next few minutes can help you to get a better idea of how you can pitch your book, how you can improve your pitch, and how you can sell books to strangers and make them happy, delighted readers. So, I'm speaking to you from a place of having attended somewhere in the neighborhood of 25 different conventions over the past 8 months. I started doing Comic Cons in December of 2023, and I made it my mission to attend as many cons as I could between now and then. So I've gotten a lot of practice at this. And if I'm honest, I started out pretty bad. Actually, let me take a step back though, because I want to give credit to a few people who helped me to start down this road. Their names are David and Lydia Scherer. David is a game designer who creates games around his wife Lydia's books. Lydia writes a series called Love Lies and Hocus Pocus. The first book in the series is Beginnings. They are a part of a community called Author Marketing Mastery Through Optimization, or known shorthand as AMO. And I met them because I joined AMO to learn how to advertise my books through Meta. That was an amazing journey. And I have plenty of content elsewhere on my podcast, Becoming a Household Name, on my blog. You can find it all over. My experience of AMO was largely an incredible experience and continues to be very educational. But the truth is, even if you are a great advertiser of your books online, you can never depend on one stream of readers finding you. And so you have to diversify. That's where David and Lydia came in. They taught me how to go to a comic convention, set up a table, learn a book pitch, and engage with perfect strangers walking the aisles. That happened last September. So I'm actually coming up on a year of having gone to cons, but I didn't really start to sign up for my own cons until about December when I went to my first one. My very first event was at a place called the St. Thomas More's Peddlers Market. When I signed up for it, you probably think I'm not very bright. I look back at it and wonder if I wasn't either, but it was the first event that I could find that accepted me. I didn't realize that I was going to a private Catholic school that was raising money for the private Catholic school by having vendors come into their gymnasium area and downstairs in the kitchen, which is where my table was set up. But having learned from David and Lydia, I decided to go and practice. I was a little bit nervous when I showed up because if you know anything about me, you know my books are incredibly vulgar. They are very violent. I do not stray away from graphic scenes, though I wouldn't say that it's gratuitous. Sometimes I comp my first book with Deadpool meets Groundhog Day. And that's just because I want people to be fully prepared for the level of violence and dark humor and comedy that's there. But in reality, where Deadpool is probably pretty gratuitous with its violence, I use violence very specifically to create momentum in the story and tension with the characters. Nevertheless, they are not books that you would first think would be a great fit for a Catholic school. My original pitch when I went was crafted around what David and Lydia taught me when I was with them in Cincinnati in September of 2023. And I may forget the exact perfect pitch that they taught me for their books, but it's if you like cats, let's see, if you like talking cats, snarky humor. See, I'm forgetting the third one, but they have 3 points: talking cats, snarky humor, and something about magic. Oh, I'm sorry, Dave. Sorry, Lydia. I've forgotten exactly, but you get the point. So it was just a really quick 3 point pitch. So you would sit behind your booth and you would say, "Hey, do you like to read?" And if somebody stopped and said yes, then you would give them that 3 part pitch. I had not read their books at that point. Naughty me, slap on the wrist. So I just had to engage with them a little. And if I felt like I didn't know enough about the plot, hand them off to either David or Lydia. But I really learned a lot. And as I was there, I started reading their book and I started trying to talk a little bit more about what I saw as being some of the great points of the book. But I felt immediately like if I had to talk any deeper than the talking cats and the snarky humor, I was in a little bit of trouble because I didn't know how to talk about the book. Needless to say, it was an amazing event. David and Lydia sold hundreds of books and made a lot of new readers, met people returning from years and years of going to that same show. And it was just all around deeply educational. That's the way that I crafted my first pitch. And so you can probably see the sign behind me if you're watching the video. Um, but I created a pitch that was, these are boozy adventures with a splash of dark humor and a twist of magical mayhem. I still remember that because I see it on my postcard all the time. And that was the pitch that I used at St. Thomas More's Peddlers Market. And I would ask people walking by, do you like to read? And if they would stop and come up, then I would say, these books have a splash of dark humor, twist of magical mayhem. They're boozy adventures. I don't even know if I said boozy adventures at first, but I kind of adapted it to that. And I did okay. I sold a lot of books that night. I met a lot of new readers. I had a lot of fun. It turns out that the men and women who attend that event like to have a little bit of wine, like to have a little bit of craft beer, and have no issues with a little bit of dark humor and some violence. So I did well at that event, and it definitely surpassed my expectations, and I got the bug. When I saw that I could sell books doing that, it was an amazing revelation for me, and I wanted as quickly as possible to go back into it and do more of it. Over the next months, I booked dozens of cons. I've been to so many. I still have a bunch booked in the future. I really dove headfirst into it. And each con, I was using that same pitch. These are boozy adventures with a splash of dark humor and a twist of magical mayhem. When people asked me for a more in-depth plot, I started to struggle, just like I had with David and Lydia's con in Cincinnati. Even though I'd written the books, I didn't have a great sense of how to deliver a succinct pitch for my book that was much longer. And occasionally I do feel like I lost people who may have been readers because I wasn't able to give them a good, clear telling of the story that left enough room for them to want to know, ooh, what happens next? So that's what I want to talk to you about today is it's great to develop a book pitch. Short, long, I don't think it matters that much. But having something that you lean into, that you talk to people about. And this can work outside of cons. This can work when you're in a group of people and you don't know somebody and it comes up that you're an author. People always be like, well, what do you write about? And you can lean right into these pitches and just deliver one right there. It's kind of a fun party trick, actually, when you really tune in on your book pitch. People, they're kind of startled. They're like, wow, that felt so professional. Like you've practiced that before. Um, just yesterday, my wife and I were down at the lake, just kind of relaxing for a little while where our kids were watching TV and playing Nintendo. And I had refined my book pitch at the last con I was at, Denver Fan Expo. Boom, I'm going back in 25. It was a great event. So I had refined my book pitch and I wanted to give it to her. And she's like, I can tell you've practiced that. So that's both good and bad. It just means that you really have familiarity with what you're saying and the order of things. And we'll talk a little bit more in depth about that, because I think if I could give you one most important thing, if you have to stop watching right now and go do something else, if you have to stop listening right now and go do something else, please understand your book pitch has to evolve. If it doesn't evolve, then you're not trying hard enough. And we do, in fact, win points in this life for trying really hard. So get after it. But I met a friend, and I just recently had him on my podcast, David Joel Stevenson. This is after months of selling my book with the old pitch, Boozy Adventures with a Splash of Dark Humor and a Twist of Magical Mayhem. We were in Oklahoma City for the Galaxy Con there, and day one of the event. I met him before any of the selling started, but I didn't talk about my books at that point. We just kind of got to know each other. I went over to his booth and saw his books after he came to mine. And, we felt like we had kind of a mutual friendship, like right away. Sometimes, you just hit it off with somebody. That was nice. But as the day went on, I sold a total of 7 books. There might have been some emotional things going on for me. I might have been low energy. I know for sure that I was not calling to people as they were walking by unless they really looked at my books. And that's something that I regret, because I think I could have done better if I had been more assertive. And that's really important. I'll talk about that in the future. But for now, let's really focus in on the pitch. So I'm doing that the whole first day, and I sell 7 books. And when it comes time to wrap up, David comes by and says, you want to go grab dinner? Yeah, I have nothing else to do. So we found a local kind of brew pub type of place with burgers. You probably know, or maybe you don't, that I'm on a carnivore diet. So I eat exclusively meat. and animal products. I kind of try to keep it pretty light on the cheese and whatnot, but for the most part, it's all meat. And so I had myself a couple of burger patties with some bacon. And we sat and we talked about all kinds of things. And it was a great evening. I learned a lot about him as a person. We really connected. After dinner was over, I had ridden with him in his truck. So he was going to take me back to the convention center to pick up my van. And we parked in front of the convention center. There was just a little like arrival spot for hotel guests. There's a hotel right across from the convention center. And we started talking more in depth about our pitches. He started telling me a little bit about his sales numbers. Oh, and funny aside, David has known David and Lydia Scherer. So David Joel Stevenson knows David and Lydia Scherer and has had a friendly competition with them selling books at cons where they have both attended. They've known each other for years. So that's just kind of a funny aside. David made a joke with me. He's like, I always trounce them. I sell more than them. I can neither confirm nor deny that. But I do know that what happened in the coming minutes when we were sitting there together in the truck really changed everything for me. I went from boozy adventures with a splash of dark humor and a twist of magical mayhem to the current pitch I have, which has enabled me to sell 3 to 4 times as many books every day at every show. And I'll bear that out with numbers too. So remember, 7 books my first day. When I listened to David pitch his book, I heard in it this level of confidence. Here's a guy who knows what his story's about, but not only does he know what his story's about, he knows what his readers are going to read his story to get. He's thought about what the reader experience is. He's thought about what are people going to walk by, what's going to grip them, what is going to entice them, what is going to get them hooked into this and have to know what happens next. How does it all resolve? I can't do his pitch, and thank goodness, because I need to worry about my own books. But he has a book about a superhero and an invisible guy, and the way that he sets up the pitch really hits you hard with, okay, I can see myself in that character. And just as you think you can see yourself in that character, here's another one. And like, I understand why it's appealing to be this superhero character. And then the superhero dies in like right away. Now you've got a guy who is strapped with the weight of the world and he's afraid of the world. And it leaves you with questions. How does he do what he needs to do? And what does it look like for a man who's terrified of everyone to now be the superhero that everybody needs? It's a fun thing, and I have not done it justice. But everything was built into that pitch, and I knew immediately when I listened to it that I was not on the right track. I needed to change everything, and I needed to change it overnight. Not only that, but if you can relate to this at all, I have quite a bit of an ego. I'm proud of myself for the things that I've done, for the risks that I've taken. I'm proud of myself for booking all of these cons, for going to them alone, for packing up my van with boxes of books, for getting the tablecloths, for getting the book stands, for getting the roll-up banner stands, the retractable banner signs, all of the stuff that I have. Like, I have invested into this process with, over $1,000 worth of materials that I need and recurring expenses of books. Like, this is not a cheap thing to do. And so I'm proud of myself, and my results have been good. And I've made money everywhere I went, with the exception of the Des Moines Book Fair. It was really, really rough at the Des Moines Book Fair, but I've done well. And so seeing somebody doing that much better than me and realizing I'm minor league to that major league, that was a tough pill to swallow. So I was feeling a ton of weight about my performance, but also a ton of weight because I knew I was leaving a lot on the table. So I went back to the parking lot where I was going to be sleeping. I sleep out of my car when I do these cons to keep expenses low. And I just dwelt on my book and thought about, like, how can I change this pitch? What can I do in a day? The next morning after a good sleep, I sat down and I started to write my new pitch. I wrote it down, I built it out, and I tried to look for those points. What's the grab? What is the hook? What's the moment where they're in? How do I adjust and switch? And how do I leave them with something in this book that is indelible? They're going to have to read it. And I killed it the next day. Just absolutely murdered it. Saturday, I sold 55 books compared to the 7 I had done the day before, maybe more than that. It was a lot. I ended the 3-day week with 99 books sold, and the response was raving. It was great. The booth next to me, there was a guy selling his personal handmade comics. And he said to me at one point, he's like, "Wow, you really reworked your pitch. That's crazy." I really liked it, and I had this super good experience. And so, yeah, just over one day, I became much more adept at giving that pitch, and that one stayed with me for a couple of cons through Lubbock and Kansas City, and other places that I went. When you have a day that doesn't go as well as you want, you feel again a little bit of weight, like this could be better. Maybe I could do this a little bit better. And this is something that I really want to hammer home for you is the idea that once you have a good pitch, that's great, but don't be afraid to tinker with it, to toy with it a little bit and see if you can improve it. Um, I think that it's really easy to settle into feeling like I figured this out and let it go on autopilot. You know the kind of people you're looking for that are going to be your readers. You know the kind of people that you want to talk to, and you start to make judgments about people without really thinking through the implications of those judgments. How many people are you letting walk by your booth without calling out to them and seeing if they might be interested in hearing from you? As an aside, I sell a good number of books to people who are barely looking at me, sometimes not even looking at me, or just give a passing glance. And I call them over and I say, "Hey, can I tell you about a book?" And they say, "I guess." I sell books to people who say, "I guess." And that is a good sign. It's a good sign that the pitch is getting dialed in, but it's also a good sign that when people are stopped long enough to pay attention, they realize that you know what they want. And that is a really special interaction. Pause on that for a moment. You know what other people want. Don't trust other people to tell you where value is. Trust yourself to figure out where the value is and then lean into that. And that's why you need to adapt your pitch even after you have a good one. So when you meet your David, or if this podcast can be the David for you, when that happens, make your book pitch, really refine it, really dial it in, and then start to give it to people and take your time. Watch their response, see when things happen for them. So, right away from the first line, do you notice that people are hooked? When you give them the opening, are they paying attention? Are you hitting the right details so that they really focus in on you? Do they seem bored after 5 seconds? It's not a time problem. Let me promise you, the length of your pitch is actually never going to be an issue. If you have a 2 minute pitch, if it's a kick ass pitch, you're going to be fine. But if you have a bunch of fluff and stuff that doesn't work, you're going to lose them after 5 seconds. And you won't be able to get them back if they're too far gone. So it's very important. Test every line of the pitch, figure out how it goes. Do they smile when you're giving your pitch? Do they frown? Do they look confused? What expression is on their face? Those moments where they make expressions, they're not even aware that they're emotionally responding to you. And so you have to study them to understand what is going on and how you can refine your pitch. It's really important. If someone looks confused, I promise you that moment of your pitch is leaving something on the table that's allowing them to escape and go back to their autopilot. And a person who's on autopilot, a person who's confused, is not going to buy your book. So pay attention to that. See the expression on their face and adjust the pitch. You can do this on the fly with the very next person you meet. Think like, okay, that moment of the pitch, they didn't really bite. How can I change what I'm doing so that I can get people to bite, so that I can clear up any kind of confusion that might have been going on? Here's another one that I learned, and I'm going to give you my pitch at the end. So please keep watching until the end here. I'm going to give you the full pitch and you can see all of these things in action. And I'm also going to tell you right now, my pitch will probably still continue to be refined as I go. I may build multiple branches of the pitch so that when I get a certain kind of person up to the table, maybe I'll deploy a different style of pitch. Maybe men get one pitch, women get another pitch. I know that probably sounds sexist, but maybe it works. Or maybe a certain kind of man gets a pitch and a certain kind of woman gets that pitch, and a different kind of man or a different kind of woman gets a different pitch. Break it down, see where the opportunities are to personalize your pitch. That's pretty high level. So let's work first on getting the pitch dialed in, but these are things to be thinking about. So, are there any opportunities in your pitch for some effective repetition? This is psychology a little bit. I love what David and Lydia taught me, that there is a power in threes. And it's the reason that they built their pitch. And it's the reason their pitch has worked really effectively for them, is that they have their talky cats, their snarky humor, and their magic. Those three things satisfy a longing that we have that we don't even know about. We like pairs. Well, it's not a pair if it's three, but we like groups of three. It's satisfying to us. So, what areas do you have to maybe group something into three? What areas do you have for satisfying repetition? This one is great. You're going to hear it in my pitch at the end, but I focus on the word problem. So just keep that in mind. My repetition is the word problem, and I'm using it to hook people in. The first time they hear it, it's just a word in the sea of words. The second time they hear it, there's a little bit of recognition. I heard that word just a second ago. And the third time they hear it and it's really close by, boom, then the light goes on, like problems. This book is about problems. These people have problems, and problems are a great thing to have when you're reading a book, because if you don't have problems, you don't have a plot. What are the aha moments of your pitch? This is a big one too. If you can figure out where people are listening to your pitch and they have the oh kind of moment, that is for David Joel Stevenson in the Victor Boone pitch. It's when the guy who's outgoing but has no superpowers, when he dies, leaving the actual invisible superhero guy to take care of the world himself. That's the moment where you're like, wait a sec. Like, I just meet these two guys and one of them is dead already. That's an aha moment. They're like, wait, what happens now? That's really important. Like, what happens now? That's the aha moment. In my book, The 9 Lives of Marvin Longhigh, it's that death. The death is the aha moment. You're not expecting a traditional hard-boiled detective mystery to have the main characters die. And what happens next? How do you build that tension, that aha moment? And then importantly, how do you leave room for curiosity and discovery? This is a big one, because if you tell a pitch and you spoil your book, people don't need to read it. And you might think that that sounds silly, but you'll be shocked. If you listen to people tell about their book, and maybe even you in the past telling about your book, accidentally spoil it, because you're trying to tell the story of it and you just get really taken up in the moment and you spoil it. And maybe you don't tell them the exact ending, but you give them all the tools they need to get there themselves. That's a spoiler, and you don't want to do it, because if you spoil a book, you will immediately take out all of the tension, all of the inflated expectations are gone. Now, I play with this in my pitch. You're going to see in just a second. I love to play with the idea that I spoiled it. And in fact, I do a small adaptation based on the response of the people listening to me, if they think I've just spoiled my book, which is really fun. And last but not least, where are the places that you can increase tension? Because I guarantee you, no matter how good your pitch is, you can increase tension. And as you experiment with the ways to increase tension, you're going to see a higher and higher conversion rate. People are going to buy your books more frequently if you can create a sense of tension. It's common sense in a way, but it's also more difficult than you think. What are the areas here where you can break it down and leave them with a sense of need to know, fear for the character? They've connected. Now they want to know what's happening. How can you increase the tension? So now I want to give you my pitch, and then I'll give you a couple of closing comments on the pitch just to talk to you a little bit about how it went. But this is my current pitch for the book, and I can do it holding the book or not holding the book. I enjoy holding the book when I do it because I can actually use a visual aid to increase tension. So I should have been ready with this, but I had to grab it. Whoa. Okay, well, I'm live. That's the fun of going live. That'll be there forever. Okay. Did you feel the tension? Because I definitely felt the tension. All right, so here's the book pitch. This is the first book in the Luke and Time mysteries. Right here, you've got Luke. She is a badass private eye with a little bit of a drinking problem. This is her partner, Lyle. He's a pretty cool dude. He's a pretty cool dude too. And he's got a little bit of an eating problem. Together, they have a money problem. So when Marva walks into their office offering a bunch of cash, if they can find somebody who's trying to kill her, they take the case without asking any questions, which is their biggest problem, because now they walk into a trap and they wind up dead. But I didn't just spoil anything for you. In fact, that's all right at the beginning of the setup. And they go back to the moment where they first met Marva. Until they can solve her mystery, they keep dying over and over again. And that's the pitch. I don't know, did it take a minute? I don't think it even took a minute, but I have refined that pitch quite a bit. And so now I want to talk to you a little bit about why I do what I do. Starting off here, Luke. She's a badass private eye with a little bit of a drinking problem. I I think that a lot of people you meet at cons in different places can suddenly relate. They're like, oh, drinking problem. I have a drinking problem. She's vulnerable. She's human. She's something, but she's also badass. So, like, that feels good. I want to relate to somebody who's a winner, but also kind of a loser. And then Lyle, same thing. He's a pretty cool dude, too. You're kind of making it out like Luke is the main person. That's why that's in the pitch, is because I want you to understand that while Lyle is a big part of the book, he's not the main thing. He's here for something else. And he's got a little bit of an eating problem. Again, I'm going to touch on that idea of relatability. So, with that in mind, now you have your two main characters in play. You have a little bit of an idea of who's in the lead role, who's in a supporting role. And very, very importantly, my book has Luke drinking and smoking cigarettes at a level that is just absolutely absurd. And it's not by accident. It's very much on purpose. She is indulgent to a level that is almost impossible to fathom. And it is humanly impossible to consume as much as she does. So I want to tip the reader off. This is here for a reason. She's got a little bit of a drinking problem. The same is true of Lyle. And this is actually something I found through my reviews, reading on Amazon and other places. People are like, wow, Lyle like walks around with an invisible refrigerator. He just pulls food out of thin air. Yes, again, I did that on purpose. I wanted that to happen. I want the absurdity to cue up kind of the magical environment of the book itself to tip you off to the idea that things are going on. And I don't want that to be a distraction for a reader. So if I give them a pitch where I already hang a lantern on two things that I know people are going to encounter in my book, I increase the chances that not only will they welcome that, but that they'll find it funny because they know that the author's in on the joke. That's really important. And I can't necessarily do that with people who discover my book organically. I don't think I need to, but I think it definitely helps. I think it helps with the interaction. And it's now created two characters who are flawed that people want to root for. They have a money problem together. That again is just driving that home. How many people that you're talking to probably have money problems? These are things that are making you care about the characters. Now, Marva walks into the office. This is a little bit of an aha moment. This is a little bit of a stabilizing moment. What kind of book is this? Oh, I recognize this. This is the classic noir setup. This is the classic hard-boiled setup. Two detectives in their office, and Marva comes in. She's a pretty lady with long legs. And I don't say that in the pitch, but you kind of see it on the book cover. And even if you don't, you know that a woman has come in needing help. Someone's trying to kill her. Now you have your tension. You've got your big uh-oh moment. Like, you already had a little bit of tension with the drinking problem, with the eating problem, with the money problem. I hit you with that. I hit you with the repetition problem. Now I introduce another kind of wild card into the pitch, and it's Marva. And someone's trying to kill her. And they take the case without asking any questions. Immediately before I even say the fourth problem, everybody knows that's a mistake. Don't take the case without asking any questions. So I tip it off, and then I say that's their biggest problem. So if I do my pitch really well, I actually linger there for just a moment to wait until I literally see the person's eyes process that I said that's the biggest problem. And then I say, because now they walk into a trap and they die. That is the biggest moment. That's the moment that everything hangs on. I gave this pitch at Denver Fan Expo, oh, hundreds of times, definitely hundreds of times. And you can tell immediately when somebody didn't follow along with you very well, when they were just hoping to get by this as soon as possible, because their eyes do nothing. They're like, oh, that sounds interesting. Yeah. If you said, they just died and people are like, yeah, that sounds interesting. Like, that person wants to go. And so I really quickly just finish up the plot. I say, but that's not the end, because they go back to the moment where they met Marva, and until they can solve her mystery, they keep dying over and over again, and that person walks away. But for the person who's bought in, there is now a tension, and you can release the tension with a little bit of humor, but then ratchet it right back up. And so when you get the people who are at the top level of invested already, those are the people who, when you say, and they walk into a trap and now they're dead, then those people are like, well, you're like, yeah, yep, the end. You set the book aside and you wait for a moment and they smile and you're like, I'm just kidding you. That's not a spoiler. I would never do that for you. Sometimes if I'm really rolling and people are in it, I'll be like, you're just thinking to yourself right now, here's a crazy author who has no idea how to pitch a book. He just spoiled the whole thing, except I didn't. See, so I add in a little bit of stuff, and it doesn't matter that it takes me a couple of extra seconds to get to the end of the pitch, because I am having a conversation and interaction with these people. Now we get to the last part. They die. Well, now they go back to the moment where they first met Marva, and until they can solve her mystery, they keep dying over and over again. I can't tell you how many times when you give that last little piece of the pitch that people standing at my booth were like, "Oh, that's badass," or "Oh, that's crazy." And a lot of them would be like, "That's like Groundhog Day," or "That's like," I mean, there's so many comps that people were giving. There's video games out there. I need to do a better job of logging what they are so that I have more comps to work with. But a lot of people, "That's like Groundhog Day," and you're like, "Exactly, yeah." So then you start having a conversation after that. You've given your pitch. You're done now. And then whatever comes next, that's the part where you got to sell the book. You've got, does that sound like something that you'd love to read? I have a special deal here at the table. You can do one for 20, you can do two for 35. Or if you think you really like these characters, why don't you grab all three for 45? And that has been a winning recipe for me. Do I think I'm going to refine the pitch some more? I do. I think I'm going to refine it a little bit more because I still see an opportunity with the number of people I'm losing at, and now they're dead the first time, to figure out like what piece of the pitch can I just increase the tension earlier so that people hang with me for a second. Maybe I'm converting at the highest possible percentage that I can, but my guess is that's not the case. And so I hope that this gives you a little bit of help in identifying how to build a pitch and to think about your book differently. Because whether you're at a Comic Con like I am, calling out to people walking by, or you're going to a party with friends and you meet a stranger who finds out you're an author and asks you what your books are about, now you have an opportunity to craft a pitch that you can deliver to that person. And shoot, you might even sell a book at a party. And that's a pretty cool party trick. We'll talk to you again soon.